Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk back into the video today, and today we're going to be recapping Day 6 of the Houston Texans training camp. And today the Houston Texans had Day 6 of training camp, and another day where C.J. Stroud struggles. At the same time, I got to say, Stroud did struggle today, but at the same time, he threw like 6 for 13 today, but about 3 or 4 of his throws were, some of his wide receivers making some mistakes. I think it was like 3 or 4 of his incompletions were, wide receivers making some mistakes today. But at the same time, Davis Mills had a better day than C.J. Stroud today. Stroud threw in another interception. Threw 2 yesterday, including a pick 6 to Derek Stingley Jr. He throws another pick 6 today, throwing it to Steven Nelson, who looked incredible for the Texans defense today throughout training camp. Defense continues to shine for the Texans, though. Pretty much everybody that's been, in that unit for D'Amico Ryans have been, playing really good for the Texans. Nobody really from the offense was standout today besides really Nico Collins, who had an excellent day. Nico Collins had his best day throughout all 6 days of training camp. Also probably had the best catch of the day. Steven Nelson had the only interception of the day. Other guys on the defense, like another guy, Jake Hansen, a linebacker who last year surprisingly made the 53-man roster, made a couple of really solid plays today. The linebackers looked incredible today. Christian Harris had an incredible day. So did his former Alabama teammate and current Texans teammate, Henry To'o, who the Texans drafted in like the 5th or 4th round. Yeah, the Texans drafted him in the 5th round this year, and Christian Harris was drafted in the 3rd round. I think Christian Harris is going to have an unbelievable 2023 season. I think you're going to see a huge step from him. The defensive line looked really good for the Houston Texans today, and Mills looked better than Stroud, but not much better. I think with Stroud struggling, it's looking like Mills is playing way much better. I think Mills, it's not like he's overplaying C.J. Stroud like too much, but at the same time, he is playing better than C.J. Stroud, and he has played better than him 2 days in a row. Davis Mills, I'm going to read some observations. Davis Mills had a better day at quarterback than C.J. Stroud. It was the 2nd day in a row where Mills beat Stroud. Not to say anything looked amazing for Mills, but he was a bit more solid than Stroud. The scorecards are all tied up with Mills winning 2 practices, Stroud winning 2 practices, and Mills winning 2 practices, Stroud winning 2 practices, and 2 draws between the quarterbacks. Davis Mills had the best play of the day during a team portion. He dropped back, and without a solid base, he flicked the ball into the air, right into the arms of Nico Collins. The gain was about 35 yards, and Nico Collins was also being double-teamed. Was definitely the best catch and definitely the best play by Nico Collins so far throughout training camp, and he definitely had the best day so far, throughout all training camp. C.J. Stroud did make a couple nice plays today, but having a roller coaster day. Stroud's wideouts didn't help out on Stroud's bad day. Steven Sims Jr., Texans wide receiver and special teamer, dropped 2 passes from C.J. Stroud today. Noah Brown jumped for no reason on a Stroud pass on a drop ball. Nico Collins fell down while running a route on an easy gain. The passes were good passes by Stroud, but just some mistakes. Drop balls by Steven Sims Jr. twice. Noah Brown jumping for no reason, and Nico Collins falling down. And then also there was a huge play that Stroud made that there was a holding call at some point in training camp as well. So you have Noah Brown jumping and dropping the ball. You have Nico Collins falling. You have 2 drop balls from Steven Sims Jr. and a holding call on a great play by C.J. Stroud where he made a huge play. And then an interception. Just some bad plays by C.J. Stroud today. The linebacker room was looking great. Jake Hansen, a guy who made the 53-man roster, made some nice plays today. Henry Tuoto looked really good, and Denzel Perryman, who the Texans added in, looked really good as well. And Christian Harris has been one of the biggest guys to watch in the Texans defense, along with other guys like Steven Nelson. Other guys like Steven Nelson, Jalen Petrie, Jimmy Ward, and Derek Stingley Jr. and Will Anderson Jr. have been great throughout training camp, and even Henry Tuoto. But, I mean, man, has Christian Harris looked good, and Denzel Perryman had a really good day as well. Roy Lopez, who was a Texan starter last year, but with the Texans adding in some defensive tackles and from free agency in the draft, Roy Lopez has a little bit of, a chance to maybe not make the 53-man roster, but he did make some solid plays today. He did make a play where the first tackle was for a loss, and then he also broke a pass up. So 2 really solid plays from Roy Lopez today for the Houston Texans. And, good day for Roy Lopez. So, final recap, Mills beat Stroud today. Stroud struggled through an interception. Some of his wide receivers dropped a couple balls, with Noah Brown once with a jump. Nico Collins falling. Steven Sims Jr. dropping two balls, and Stroud throwing an interception and a holding call during training camp when Stroud made a huge play, and then Stroud also throwing a pick six to Steven Nelson. Stroud's going to have these days where there's going to be some struggling days. All rookies will have that. All rookie quarterbacks usually have a couple of struggling days throughout training camp, and Stroud has witnessed that throughout, the last 2 days, and hopefully he, with the day off tomorrow and a couple, struggling days, and, him having a great camp before these past 2 days, hopefully Stroud on Thursday, when training camp comes back after Wednesday's day off, he'll be able to bounce back. I do believe he will have a way better day on Thursday. I know I said that yesterday, but after 2 off days where he's looked bad, he's thrown 3 interceptions, has just been off. Going into these 2 bad days for him, and now having an off day, I do believe on Thursday Stroud will have a way better day on Thursday. Davis Mills had a good day today. Nico Collins had his best day of camp so far. Defensive guys looked great. Linebackers Jake Hansen, Denzel Perryman, Henry Tuoto, Christian Harris. I can't remember. I mean, Blake Cashman was looking great for the last couple of days before this, but I mean, I haven't really heard anything about him today. And also some of the defensive. Well, what I read was that the defensive line looked great, but the 2 guys I heard the most about were Roy Lopez and Will Anderson Jr. Will Anderson Jr. continues to dominate for the Texans training camp. Jalen Petrie, who's been dominant for the Texans throughout training camp for the first 5 days, was a little bit quiet today. Had a solid day, but was quiet. And he's been a guy and same thing for Stingley. I didn't hear a lot about those 2 guys who have been dominant for the Texans in the first 5 days, but didn't hear much about those 2 guys today. But some of the other secondary for the Texans, like Steven Nelson and Jimmy Ward and a couple other guys in the secondary, looked really good for the Texans today. Steven Nelson in the last couple of days has been dominating in Texans camp and should be a real weapon for us in the defense and the secondary, facing against number 2 wide receivers. I think he should be a real good player for our defense this year. We had him last year, but I think he's going to be way better than he was last year with this new coaching staff and this new defensive staff. I think Steven Nelson's going to be way better than he was last year. These are our thoughts on day 6 of the Houston Texans training camp. That's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace out. Go Texans.